Now today's pen and wash tutorial for you is how to paint a beautiful bird called Dartford Warbler. We're not just painting it, but we're drawing it as well, because this will be done using the pen and wash technique, which basically is waterproof ink and watercolour. So let's get the pens working and those brushes wet. Let's get started. I'm going to be using it as a Cora Micron and the nib size is 01. You can see how fine that nib size is on there. That really nice. As I mentioned in the intro, is that you need to make sure that your pens are waterproof. If you just simply use a normal pen, when we add the watercolour over the top later on, you'll find that watercolour will just simply blur those pen lines. Quick technique, I'm going to use the side of the pen to begin with, just by very lightly using the weight of the pen, just touching the watercolour surface. So by just catching with no pressure at all, so just the weight of the pen as I mentioned, you can just get enough ink off that pen to create more of a lighter shade. See that? If you raise that pen up, so you're going to have the pen more that angle, like that, then without any pressure, that's the sort of line you get. But remember, lower that pen down and hold it further away, then you'll achieve those very fine marks. Edge, just using the edge of that nib. The Dartford Warbler, let's have a quick look. I'm going to start off around the outside edge, using the edge of the pen, just to begin with. I'm trying to just be careful not to go too dark too soon. Something like that. All the way around. Look at the direction these lines go as well. So keep a check on that, because that will help to determine the shape. So using the side of the pen for those lightest areas. When you get to any darker areas, then you can afford to just raise that pen up a little bit more, but not just yet. I've already drawn the image out, as you can see, got it all ready and raring to go. You can either draw the image out by doing that freehand to begin with, or you could use trace down paper, as I very often do, which is a graphite backed paper. That works really well. Or you can use a grid system as well. Now, if you're not very confident in your drawing skills, have a look at the link to the top right hand corner of the screen, and you'll find there I've got some little tips and tricks on different techniques you can use to get the outline onto the paper, just so you can make a start on the painting side of it. Well, that's what I normally do with my watercolour classes on Patreon anyway. Because when you do it with something like tracing paper, you don't need to know that much about drawing. But is it cheating? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Take your time around the eye, just using the edge of the tip again just about. My pen's probably about that sort of angle at the moment. When you work on the pupil, make it smaller to begin with, and then you can afford to go a little bit wider if you need to. And then you've got the inner eyelid. It goes around there. I'm just about making out my pencil mark there, look. Take your time. Don't try and do it in one go. And then what I'm going to do is use the side of the pen and flick out a few little markers here and there, all the way around. Think of a clock face. That's the centre of the clock. And then you've got the hands going all the way around the outside edge. And that's now ready to receive a little bit of colour over the top. Yeah. There's going to be a straightforward drawing today. We're not going to go too complicated with it, because we can make it semi-realistic if we wanted to, by being extra vigilant with those pens and watercolours. But today we're just going to relax a little bit more, and just have a little bit of fun as we do so, without going too detailed. The top of the beak is a lighter line, isn't it? So lower that pen down again, not that low, something like that. So you're just catching the tip again, or the edge of the tip. So I'm actually catching the metalwork there as well as the edge of the tip. And very carefully, hardly any pressure whatsoever, drawing or scraping the top of that beak, and then further down as well. Think about the joint of the beak, which is obviously down here, all the way down there. That's darker, so I can afford to bring my pen up that little bit higher. Then go over those outlines, just for now anyway. The idea is to get the main outlines on there first of all, and then I can start to build it up as I go along, by putting even more detail in between. Here's some factoids for you. Even though this is more or less a brown bird, they are quite distinctive because of the reddish breast and also that very bright red eye ring. It's non-migratory, so it stays here in the UK, and you normally find them around lowland heathlands and gorse areas as well. And we do get quite a lot of gorse here in the southwest of the UK. So for example in South Devon, not too far from where I live, there are some Dartford Warblers around. But I have yet to see one with my own eyes. One day, maybe. They tend to feed on insects and also spiders that they find within the gorse bushes. And they only weigh about 10 grams. I know, hardly anything. The thing is with the Dartford Warblers though is that when it gets to winter time, they don't like the cold much. And you find their numbers can plummet when it's a really, really cold winter. So I think they should be tucked up warm in bed when the weather gets really, really cold. Remember, there's just pen and wash, so it doesn't matter if you have an outline around everything. Because that's the idea, that's the technique which we're using today. When I work solely with watercolours, I don't like outlines at all, not really. So I think it can look a little bit too cartoony when that happens. But in this case, it's not a problem. No. Also put some little reference marks in so you know the direction the feathers grow or go. I do that all the time because when you start to draw in those finer feathers, you can lose track of the direction they've got to go in, and then you find out that your bird is starting to look rather flat because you've lost the shape. So do make sure they put some little directional marks in here and there, just kind of keep you on track for that moment when you get really involved in that drawing, because I know I do. I'm sure you'll be the same. And you get carried away with just drawing in one single direction. Another little tip as well for you, I do like giving tips today. I know I'm very generous. Is that when you're working on the drawing, keep glancing back and forth for that reference photograph. I say it a lot with my Patreon videos, but it's very true because the more frequent you look at your photograph, the more you're likely to remember the direction of the marks, the length of those lines or thereabouts, the curvature of those lines, and also how dark are they. So there are lots of things to kind of think about when you're working on this drawing. But as long as you take your time, don't try and rush it. There's no particular time to get it done by. Of course not. No. If you don't finish it today, it doesn't matter. Finish it another day. Then you'll find that by taking your time, you'll be able to spend more time working out where things go. Just by ensuring that you keep looking at that photograph. I know. So I'm losing the plot today. I'm going a little bit daft. So I'll put plenty of reference marks in, and then once you've got those in, and all those main outlines on the bird, then you can start to fill it in with detail. Smaller, lighter lines. Remember to angle that pen down when you do so. And you'll be fine, I'm sure. Just take your time. And take them regular breaks as well, okay? Come back with those fresh eyes, it's very important. One more tip for you. Also cross those lines over as well. So when you put your lines on the paper, crisscross them, but elongated crisscrosses. Not like tic-tac-toe or noughts and crosses, anything like that. Just elongated crosses. And that will stop it looking as if it's been combed. So remember those little fine lines, but also crisscrossing every now and then as well. There's a variety of waterproof pens you can use on the market, there really is. My other one I tend to prefer is one made by a company called Pilot. I do like those. But have a look around to see what you can find. And very often you get a selection of sizes as well. 01, which is this one here, is very often the finest one you can find. And don't forget you can use that pen on its own without the use of watercolour and create some very detailed drawings. The paper is £140 cold pressed. And this is something that's been supplied by a company from China, which was very kind of them. And it's a whole calendar for the year. And they do stand up on a little stand they provide as well. So this is why I'm doing one per month, because I don't want to waste the paper. Or the fact that they've gone to the time and trouble sending me these watercolour calendars through the post. I'll put the details underneath for you if you are interested. But it's sort of a bit late in the year now, isn't it? Yeah, I know. If you want to have a look at the previous 4 months that I've worked on, from January, February, March and April, just let you know I can do that. I'll put them in the link down below, but also I'll add one to the end of this video for you as well, so you can click on that and go to it. We've got some lovely projects on the go, we really have. Now when you've got the first layer of detail on, that is when you want to start to think about adding the darker marks in. Don't completely blacken it though. The problem with blackening it too much or putting too much detail on is that you find that when you add the watercolour washes over the top, then washes will not be vibrant anymore. They'll be very dull, very dark. because of those darker lines underneath. So do try to leave some lighter areas on that paper. Don't completely fill it in. When you're looking at that reference photograph, look at the depth of tone. In other words, how dark is it there? Is it light? Is it like a mid-tony colour? Or is it really dark? So get those lighter areas in first of all, then you can pop your mid-tones on, then finally get those darker tones on. And you find between the eye and the beak, that's fairly dark around there, but it's not black. The same applies to the area underneath the beak as well. And already I'm starting to get into this drawing. You do get relaxed into it very quickly indeed. Also remember at the top of the head, you find that the lines go a different sort of direction, don't they? Sort of swoop down in a gentle curve towards that beak. It's in sort of little clumps here and there, isn't it? So think about a clump, draw it by using directional marks, then end it, and then put another clump by the side of it like that, and kind of build them up as you go along, keeping a track of the direction these lines go in as well. So basically what you're doing, you're layering those clumps. It is very clumpy. It looks like it's just got out of the shower, and all the feathers have got a little bit damp. Also don't forget you can use a black and white version of this photograph as well, just to make it easier to be able to spot those tonal variations. In other words, again, where it's darker, where it's not quite as dark, where it's really pale. So it's a good way of working on a drawing. If you're not sure about working from a coloured photograph when you're in the drawing out process like this, then make sure that you've got a grayscale version, in other words, black and white version of that reference photograph. At least then you've got a good idea on where those darker marks go, the midtones, and of course those lightest tones. And you find this particular bird, the light is coming from the top right hand corner and illuminating the right hand side. So that would mean obviously is that the right hand side needs to be a little bit paler. So ease off those marks. Don't go too dark. Be gentle. A bit like me really. Pardon? Just looking at the beak. Now I'm going to use the side of the pen again. So make sure you got that angle about right, something like that again. Yeah, like that. And I'm going to turn my body around. In fact, I'm going to turn the paper around more than the body, because it's a bit awkward to get my hand at the right angle. So by turning the paper around, like I've done here, you find you've got more of a natural movement when you're moving that pen. Rather than forcing it that way, it's easier that way. You see what I mean when you try it? So lower that pen down, and then graze the paper. We don't need much on the beak, just a little bit here and there. A light grazing like this, look. You just see a small amount of ink coming off the pen. Yeah, like that, maybe. Yeah, I'd say so. Got to put a few little hairs just inside that nostril. That's plenty. That's all you need. All you need is hairs. Okay. And then I'm going to blend, by using the side of the pen again like that, the edge of this joint line for the beak. We've got the upper part or lower part, or upper mandible or lower mandible. There you go. Let's get technical, shall we? And it's darker towards the tip, isn't it? I know it's a different colour. I realise that. I'm still going to graze it around there. And also graze it probably about maybe 2/3 of the way up. So it leaves more of a white line there, which will end up being yellow. And probably darken it a little bit more towards the base of the beak, around there. As for the caterpillar, we have got some curved lines coming around like that. So imagine a rope shape, and you've got curved lines going around like that. They're not that curved, just gentle curves like that. I'm just over exaggerating it here, obviously, because your lines would be something like, yeah, grazing the pen again, that sort of style. Got it? That sort of thing. Doesn't need a great deal of shading either. Maybe on the right hand side, but not a lot elsewhere really. Just smidgens here and there. What's a smidgen? Any idea? I don't know either. So work your way down the caterpillar, putting these different sections in. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the photo, of course not. We'll be saying the same thing about the gorse that this bird has stood on top of. Doesn't have to be the same as the photo, no. If it looks okay, then it is okay. Then using the edge of the pen again, just the edge. Lightly shade, just the way we did on the beak. Just that right hand side there, look. I'm going to darken it just around here. A little bit more around there. Try to do it very tentatively at the moment. I don't want to go too dark. They also got a few more curves here and there throughout. So you got the main ones coming down the body, but you can darken that a little bit more. Notice how these little curves are put on there do change in direction, don't they? So in the middle is more or less a straight line. Above is more of a smile. Below is a sad face. A little bit more shading in there. And I think that will do for the drawing out stage of this lovely little caterpillar. I'm trying to keep the tail feathers very pale because they are further away from the bird. And the further away they are, the fainter they'll need to be. Otherwise it'll look like it's kind of sticking out the side of the bird rather than from the back. So be extra careful when you're doing that, okay? Don't be too detailed with it. As for the gorse, well, you can make it up as you go along if you want to. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as a photograph like I said earlier on, which it doesn't. However, you do want to get the main structures in there if you can. So if you decide to leave a section off, then do so. Doesn't matter. Who's going to know other than the two of us? Some of what I assume are needles on the gorse. You can interweave them. You can thread one through the other. So a little bit like a weave really in places, but not too much. Just every now and then, weave one section underneath another. And as you do so, you start to form a bit of a network there going on. Also, don't darken it too much because you want the green to stand out on there, don't you? I'm trying to be extra careful not to go too dark with this. I'm still using the pen at a slight angle to create the outline first of all. Then I'll very lightly, I'll stress the word very, fill them in places. Remember that you need to leave quite a lot of the paper as white paper really. So when we add the green on, that green will stand out. Take your time. And remember, just make it up as you go along, with some basic structures just to start off. Now when you shade these, once again, very lightly, using the side of the pen, like that again, just graze one side of each individual section. And that will help give us a little bit of shape here and there. Don't fill them in whatever you do. Don't fill them in. Because as I keep saying, you want those colours to stand out. So lightly shade them, and once you've done that, then we can make a start on applying those colours. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Now you've finished doing the pen work, go over the top of that with a dust-free eraser, just remove any surplus graphite off the paper. Because if you leave it on there, that will mix with the paint and dullen those colours down. If you are interested in knowing what the colours are which I've used, I have got all the colours listed on my Patreon channel for this particular tutorial, okay? If not, what you need to do, just test out your own colour supply that you've got on some scrap watercolour paper like I've been doing here to work out the colours that you can see within that reference photograph. I'll start off with a size 2 brush, and I think what I'll do, I think I'll work in the eye first of all. I'll go for my orange. I'm going to water it down that little bit more. Load the brush up, give it a roll, give it a tap or two on some kitchen roll, and then apply it to the eye. Now, in the eye, we've got a bit of a highlight in the top right hand corner. So I'm going to leave that little area there to stand out. I'm going to tap it, and that will thicken the mix. Look at that, that's a bright orange eye, isn't it? Really bright. That's all we need to go across the eye. Now we've got a bit of a highlight in there. Just by very lightly dabbing with a brush, don't paint it in, just dab it. Leaving one small area just clear at the top. When that's dry, we'll paint the eye ring as well. Meanwhile, I'm going to paint the beak. So let's go for our yellow colour. And just simply fill it in. It's about there. We'll fade that out in a minute. And the top part of the beak, you can see it more towards the base of the beak, can't you? But as you work your way towards the front of the beak, it just disappears. So probably it's about there. That's that. Yeah. And we've got blue towards the end there. Now, the only thing when we've got yellow on the paper, and we've got a bit of a blue mixed as well, is that blue and yellow make, well, green, as we know. So I'm going to go for my blue. Not to do that though, we'll do that in a bit. I'm going to apply this over the wing. Now as I said earlier on, I want the wing to be sort of faded into the background. So I've not added quite as much detail for that wing. If you find that the colour's not rich enough, let it dry or give it a blast with a hairdryer. Then go over the top of it again with the same mix, the same consistency. You find it will work really, really well. And for now, that's all it needs to do on that wing. When you look at this mix here, look, you can see that's very dark. But in reality, when you actually paint it, because it's quite watery, that's the colour it is. So that really dark colour is what it will look like if we use more than one layer of the same mix to the same consistency. Right, give it a quick dry, and then what we'll do is paint the rest of the beak. But I think I'll finish off the beak first of all. And I don't want to put too much paint on the paper, because we have got quite a few highlighted areas there, haven't we? So follow this down there using the very tip of the brush. A little bit above the nostril and around it. And maybe a touch around there. Clean damp brush, give it a dry. And then lightly soften that edge down. Maybe a touch of water on the brush, we'll see. I don't want to wet it too much. And once again, I might add another layer over the top once this is nice and dry. We have to remember that our colours will dry that little bit lighter. Bit of a line down there. Clean damp brush. And just soften that edge down. Then repeat the process for the beak. And then we'll go back to that eye. I want to get a little bit of this colour here. And that one, by the way, I'll let you know what it is burnt sienna. And I'm going to just a touch of that. Just around the outside edge of the iris. Just to darken it slightly more. Just around the edge like that. We'll give it a quick dry and then we'll work on that eye ring. That's what I call it anyway. Okay, let's go back to our orangey colour. And within that orangey colour, I'm going to add a drop, just a drop, of alizarin crimson. Look at that. Oh. Give it a test. Make sure it's okay before you use it. That'll do. So I'm going to use that now. Load it, roll it, give it a tap. Just for that eye ring. We have to do a lot of drying in this game. We really do, don't we? I'll have to dry it again after this. Because I really want to start getting those washes on the body. And it's just a slightly different colour to the eye, isn't it? Hence the alizarin crimson in there. A little bit more just to thicken the paint, just a touch. Here and there. Look at that. Woohoo! That stands out, doesn't it, really? Might lift off a little bit of paint on this side. Just to lighten it marginally. And once again, this will fade a little bit as it dries. Just a touch there, touch there, touch there, touch there. That'll do for now. In fact, see what we'll do, while we're waiting for that to dry, let's work on the caterpillar. And I've already got some green, as you can see, made up ready for that. I have. I do things like that, you know. And we're going to start from around there. I think what I might do is more or less fill it in, other than those pale lines we can see within the caterpillar. So do the same thing. Remember that we've already done the shading work. So when you're adding those colours over the top, you don't need to paint details at all. So all the matter of colour, that's it. Not detail, we've done all that. And once again, if you needed to, you can add an extra layer over the top if the colour's not rich enough. But leave it to dry first. Now I've gone over some of them lines there, but I'm not worried in the slightest about that because there's ways we can fix that. We'll do that in a bit. Let's give it another quick dry and we'll paint those feathers. Right, okay, size 6 brush, here we go. First thing I'm going to do is dampen, don't soak it through though, just dampen the top of the head. Doing your best to go around the eye without touching it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Just dampen the paper. And wet it just below the beak around there. So what you're looking at here are all the grey areas. Like a bluey grey, isn't it? Which I've got here. Apart from that French Marine Parting Company again, I know, I can see it in there. It needs yet another mix. Give it a mix. Give it a tap. And then apply it to the paper, very lightly to begin with. I like to do it carefully straight side. Don't want to go too thick too soon, so make sure all your mixes are watery, by the way. At least then you've got a bit more control over how much pigment you put on the paper. And simply fill it in. I know, that's simple. Pop it on the paper. Now we have got a bit of a funny colour down there. It's not grey and it's not, well, brown. It's a mixture of the two. So I'm still going to wet down there and add a very light layer of this in there first of all. Then when we add the brown on, we'll overlay that with the brown, which will then give us a similar colour to what we can see in the photograph. Hopefully. Fingers crossed anyway. Well, that's the blue on. You know what we've got to do now, don't you? Yeah, we've got to give it another dry, of course. Okay, now here we go. It's nice and dry once again. And once again, I'm going to wet the body. All the way down to the gorse this time. Wet it, allow that water to soak into the paper before you apply the colours over the top. Do note as well, we have got some lighter areas lower down the body, towards the belly. So allow for that down there as well. In other words, don't wet those areas. Leave them nice and dry. So when you apply the paint on the paper, the paint will only flow where the water is on the paper. That's it. Okay, go for your sort of brick colour. Then apply it to the paper. That's a lovely colour that, you know. You may need more than one layer. Again, the mixture is watery. At least then if you make a mistake, you've got a little bit of room to change it, to fix it, and sort it out. Then blend it into the blue just above. And you can see that changes the colour there. Similar to the reference photograph. I've also noticed as well there are some lighter areas around this body. So for those lighter areas, lessen the amount of paint that you add in there. You can lighten it just by going over the top with a damp, clean brush. I think I'll definitely be needing more than one layer of this colour. And once you've done that, give it another dry. It's all about drying this tutorial, isn't it? Drying between layers. And because you're drying it between layers, it gives you a bit more control over those paints as well. Also, if you don't dry it thoroughly, you find you start putting another layer over the top and the paint underneath will start to lift off. But even if it's bone dry, still apply a second layer nice and carefully, without disturbing the paint underneath too much. If you keep going over the same area time and time again, that paint underneath will start to lift off. Whilst that's drying, let's have a little bit of water down there. Not much though, just dampen it lightly. Going to go for a tiny amount of yellow. Add that in. That's more than enough, probably too much actually. Then over the top of that, go with some mild blue. And blend them together. Just to dull that white down, because it's not pure white there, is it? It's very dull. I'm still going to wait for that to dry. But whilst that's drying, I'll start working on the gorse. Okay, let's work on that gorse next, shall we? We're still going to work on the details around there, even though we're not painting details. I know. Just an added effect which we need to drop in there to create those little white marks we can see on those feathers. As for the gorse, I'm going to switch to my size 4 brush actually for this because it's quite small down there, isn't it? Start off with a yellow first of all, and add that in towards the tips, like that. That's it, that's one done. Not quite, I know. Bit of yellow there, and so on. This is more like a sienna colour around there. Just a few tips here and there, you don't have to do it everywhere. Just a splash of colour. And then all we need to do then is add the green into the mix. Yeah, but leaving some of those tips nice and clear. Oh, actually before we go to the green, we'll also add a little bit of brown in there as well. We've got some sienna colour there. So that can also go towards the very tip of the tips. The very tip of the tips. Like that. Just add some colour onto the paper, as simple as that. Okay, back to the yellow and I'll carry on. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, you can just about see, well, a pair of legs Only just. Only just. So we've got one roughly about there. We've also got a tip of that there. So that's one leg just around there. So I'm just going to drop a bit of colour in to suggest something there. But to be honest with you, people might not think it's a leg because it's hidden behind that gorse. So every now and then, not every one, just every now and then, just drop the yellow in. We've got a foot around there. Yeah. So we'll need to add that in as well. Just a bit of yellow and a bit of sienna right at the very end. Then once you've done that, grab your sienna colour and paint in the tips of the flowers. Just a small amount of paint, that's all you need around there, look. If I can even blend that, just by taking some of that paint off the brush. Just a suggestion of colour, that's all I'm after there. And then to the green, remix it, drop it in. We can add another green over the top of that if it's not bright enough. This mix is actually quite bright, so it's not too bad. We can brighten it even more. One, by adding a bit more yellow to it, but also by thickening down that paint. At the moment the mix is still very watery, but that's okay. And paint in those green areas. Then all we need to do then is fine tune the bird, or anywhere else you want to fine tune. And then we've got the 1 foot, so I can just about see down here, so a bit of orange. Once again, you can barely tell it's even there. Quite hidden actually, isn't it? See one claw there, and there's another claw, believe it or not, just here. We've also got the leg going down here. I'm looking carefully at that photograph so I can just about make it out. Just there. And sort of goes down there as well. Yeah. Now, there are many ways of creating highlights on a bird within those feathers. One is by scratching out. And you can do that by using a craft knife such as this one here. And all it does, where's my brown colour? Is scratch out the paper like that. I don't like scratching the paper like this because I think it just damages the paper, doesn't it? But it does create those highlights, as you can see there. So it does work really well. So we can either use that method or use white paints, such as white watercolour paints or white gouache, whichever one you want to use. And I think for me that's the way I would do that. So I'm going to switch over to here. Let's get some white paint in there. This one is by Shinhan Pass. It's their Colour Design Series 899. I do like that because it's a combination between gouache and watercolour. So a little bit of that on a brush. Not too runny, not too thick. You get the hang of it after a while. Let's get that out of the way, isn't it? I'll test it out on the caterpillar first of all. So we've got all these little marks going down there. Skipping all the time. There's not one even line. The same applies to this side as well. Skipping. A touch of white in there. The more waterier, is that a word? The more waterier the white, the more it will fade as it dries. It won't be quite as bright. So worth noting. So sometimes if you've got a nice creamy white, leave it creamy, don't add any water to it. Then you'll end up with a nice white line. They can be nice and bright. Sometimes it's useful when it's not really creamy and really bright, but more of a milky consistency or even a watery consistency. As I said, the more water you add, the more it tends to fade. Okay, let's work underneath the beak now. Just add a few little white marks down there. Touch more paint on the brush. The good thing about all these colours in your mixing palette is that once they dry, you can reuse them anyway. You can just reactivate them and use them again. So a few little marks here and there. If we need to, we'll tone them down afterwards. We'll see how they go on the paper first. Some are dots, some are lines. They are different directions, so bear that in mind. And it just starts off at the base of the beak as well. Just a few little details. If it's too much, don't worry. That was a bit too much, that one. Once dry, we can always go over the top of that with some paint. Don't overdo it. If you do, we'll tone it down afterwards. Even though the watercolour side of it isn't the detail side, we do need to add just a light layer of detail over the top, just by using our white paint. And then, if needed, a little bit of toning down with some colour. And we should be then just about there on this painting. So that's too stark, that far too white. So that will certainly need to be toned down. Don't forget down the bottom as well. We've got those white feathers showing through. Add some in there, but more of a milky version of this white and not creamy. Just so it fades out a little bit. White paint can sometimes take a lot of getting used to. But as long as you take your time and play with it, play with the idea, and see what it does. Try it out on scrap watercolour paper first of all. At least then you've got a better understanding of how it's going to work before you go to your main painting. It's all about consistencies, with those creamy, milky, and even watery consistencies. And each one works really well in different scenarios. Then all you need to do then, wash your brush out, swing your palette around, grab some of your sort of bricky colour, and very lightly, just one fell swoop, go over the top of some, not all, of those marks. That tones them back, doesn't it? But you can still see them just. And that does seem to add extra depth to the feathers. If you need to tone them down that little bit more, let it dry first of all before you do so, just to ensure that the white paint doesn't blur. I've got plenty more videos on using the pen and wash technique. So if you're interested in trying another one out, have a look to the link to the top right hand corner of the screen. I'll see you there.